Hello and welcome to another episode of Insert Buzzword. This evening we have the pleasure of having Pablo Levi on the podcast, a good friend from my MBA days. We also have Jeremy Warner here, fresh from exciting new ventures with camping. So Pablo, why don't you give us a wee introduction for our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get stuck into your journey.
Sure. Thank you for having me over. It's great to speak to you guys. My name is Pablo Levi, and I'm currently the head of sustainability at Arnold Park Automobiles. I'm actually originally from Mexico City. Moved to Scotland about 15 years ago, first to Aberdeen, where I was about 8 years, and now to Glasgow, where I've been the last 7 years, and had a really great time.
Perfect.
What did you do in Aberdeen? Pablo, sorry. What brought you to Aberdeen from Mexico City of all places?
Yeah, I get that asked a lot. I knew that I wanted to sort of study abroad, but the most obvious choice for kids in Mexico City is to go to the US. But I figured that if I went to the US, I think nowadays there's like 15 million Hispanic people in the US. So I figured I would just end up hanging out with other people from Mexico City. And I wanted to go somewhere where I could be just really experience a different culture and really, integrate with it and all that. And I had never met anyone who'd been to Aberdeen. So I thought, why not?
Right. Of all places, Aberdeen in Scotland, you didn't fancy Glasgow or Edinburgh?
Well, I remember this. So this is before YouTube and Google Maps and stuff. So I remember I went to the British Council, which is like the best thing you could do at that time. And they had brochures for different universities. And the Aberdeen brochure was really nice. And they had the people on the beach and it was really sunny and nice. And I thought, oh, that looks nice.
They sold you a dream, Pablo.
They did. Yeah.
I love it. Sorry, Tristan, you were saying?
Oh, well, did you ask for your money back once you arrived in Aberdeen, or were you pleasantly surprised?
Anyone I meet from Scotland who's not from Aberdeen always says that kind of thing. But I've had a really good time. I think it's a great university city because it's got a really nice little campus, like historical campus, and it's kind of like over idyllic. We went to Strathclyde after that, and Strathclyde is the opposite because Strathclyde is like in the middle of the city, not so much a campus feel to it. So, obviously Glasgow got a lot more to offer, but Aberdeen was nice to be a student in.
Nice. And what was it you studied in Aberdeen, Pablo? Sorry, just keep on over you.
I would study master's in civil and structural engineering.
Understood. Sorry, Tristan, after you.
No. You like tuck me up, so let's keep that theme going. I was going to say, what was your upbringing like in Mexico? It's not something that I think Jeremy and I could say we could relate to, so it'd be interesting to hear what that was like for you. What were your early influences?
Yeah, it's pretty uneventful, I guess. I guess most people would say that about their upbringing, but pretty idyllic. Parents happily married, both of them with good careers, very good role models, kind of just modeled my life after them. We did actually, when I was 7, we moved to Guatemala for my dad's work. And so Guatemala and Mexico are actually very similar to each other, like Canada and the US. But for whatever reason, my parents thought it'd be a good idea to send my sister and I to an American school where it was like all English language and mostly international kids. And that was a pretty good experience because, sort of broadens your horizons about like what other cultures can be.
So how did you find the culture shock moving from like Latin America over to Scotland? What were some of the big differences that you noticed straight away?
So obviously there was the language bit. I did panic a little bit when I got to Aberdeen and I thought, oh wow, I can't understand what they're saying. And I thought I spoke very good English. But what was like the biggest shock to me was the first winter and probably the second winter a little bit more, how dark it is. And particularly in Aberdeen, it gets really dark really early and the weather and the wind and stuff. And I found that actually quite difficult to adapt to. I think it took me many years until like winter was not an absolute nightmare for me.
I'll bet. So do you not get the sort of the variation in the length of the days in Mexico City? Was it just quite
Not that
consistent?
dramatic. It's quite consistent. You know, close to the equator.
For first time. Yeah, okay. And the temperature difference, I guess, it must have been quite severe.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, you know what? I always expected, you know, I've never been to Scotland before. I always expected Scotland to be a lot colder, kind of like in Harry Potter movies, a lot of snow. And there hasn't been that much snow lately.
Cold, wet, and windy.
Yeah, pretty much. They don't show you that in the Harry Potter movies.
No, or that brochure from the British Council.
That's true.
Nice. So after studying your master's in civils, what did you do after that, and how did you end up on the MBA strategy?
Well, first I went to work for oil and gas as a structural engineer up in Aberdeen. And, you know, I guess it's not like something that I had wanted to do all my life. But once you're in Aberdeen, which is very much an oil and gas sort of town, it kind of like draws you in because at least at the time, you know, and this is like, you know, some time ago before net zero and everything was the thing. It was like, I think perceived, at least locally, as a very prestigious thing to do. And it paid well. Like it paid much better than a structural engineering job we've done anywhere else in the UK. So I guess, you know, when you're like, you know, 21 and you're not sure what to do, I get it, at least in my thinking, is if you follow the money, it's probably, you know, good for a reason. Like it might be a good career choice without thinking it too much. And so I went to do that. In hindsight, I mean, I enjoyed it, but was it like my life's passion? No, I was like, absolutely not. You know, it's just, it was kind of just like, you know, without having any better plans of being young, it was a thing to do, which turned out to be a good thing. But I spent 3 years working on what they call brownfield projects, which is like modifications to existing oil platforms. And that was fun, but I just realized it was not like what I was meant to do with my life. You know, I think I didn't know it back then, but I think my core skills are with dealing with like large, unstructured, untested problems. Whereas with engineering, you're doing the exact opposite. You're hyper focusing on a very small part of the problem and trying to solve that. So it was like completely the wrong sort of work for me. And then I didn't know what to do next. So, again, you know, modeling my life after my parents, I thought, well, my dad did an MBA, so I should go do an MBA.
More amazing. And, so I'm also a fellow Strathclyder, didn't do an MBA, however. What drew you to Strathclyde?
Well, I mean, there was a couple of things. At the time, I had just gotten married to my wife, and my wife, my girlfriend now, wife, she was in Aberdeen. So I wanted to choose university close enough that we could still, you know, meet each other on the weekends. You know, I had applied to universities down in England, but, you know, you're talking flights or like a 10-hour train ride or more. And it didn't feel like that was going to be working. And on the other hand, you know, I really do like Scotland. Like I've had the chance to be in all the other rest of UK countries, and I've got nothing against it, but to live in, I think I'd rather live in. And, you know, Strathclyde.
Pablo.
That's right.
And like, so it was more, so do you know what, listen, the reason I went to Strathclyde is pretty similar to yours. My girlfriend, but now wife, went to Strathclyde, so there was a proximity element, but so it wasn't the prestigious reputation of the business school that drew you. It was to be close to your knowledge.
Yeah, you know, it was, I mean, I looked at all the Scottish business schools, and at the time Strathclyde was the best ranked. So I mean, that was that choice done. But, you know, it is a trade-off because I have friends who have done that, you know, gone to a very prestigious university, but it means like that's the end of their relationship. And some people choose that, and that's fine. I guess that's a very personal choice.
I'm with you. No, 100% behind you on that one. Yeah, similar for me. Obviously, when we were applying for uni, it was like, yeah, pull the Scotland, pull the UK, but yeah, the rest is history. And I've been happy married with a childhood sweetheart for a long time. So there you go.
There you go.
So I guess, yeah, so after the MBA, which my understanding is pretty intense, like it's a pretty full-on year if you're doing it full time. But I guess, yeah, you've ended up at Arnold Clark. So how did that journey from MBA to what's a pretty interesting career now? How did that look for you?
Yeah, it was not a straight line by any means. So one of the things I figured when I was doing the MBA is that if you're able to sell things, you're probably going to be okay in life in general, regardless of what you choose to do. And even if like sales is not your job title, even if you could be a lawyer or a consultant or a CEO or, pretty much any job, you have to sell things to people. And one of the things I noticed on the MBA, you get these companies come in and they give you like projects or problems to work on, like real life problems. And what I realized is that almost every problem they came to us with was a sales problem. Really, they just want to sell more. And I thought, well, that's important. I should probably get good at that. But I was like completely terrified because that's probably the thing I knew how to do the least, right? I didn't know how to sell anything. And it's probably we teach you in business school or in engineering school. Like there's a course in marketing, but no one teaches you how to sell anything, right? So I figured, well, the only way to figure this out is to just try and go and do it. So I took a job in sales for a company called Adaptation International that sold products to structural engineers. So I felt a little more comfortable with that because I used to be a structural engineer. So I thought, well, at least I'm selling to people whose job I understand very well. So, and that was a good experience. It was a very face-to-face type of job, almost like door-to-door, traveling around. I used to cover all of Scotland and Ireland for that company. So, you get to see all these wonderful industrial estates and
beautiful grey aluminium building sites. Yeah, sounds lovely.
And it was, it's very, very instructive. But after about, I guess, 15, 16 months, I figured, right, okay, I've learned as much as I need to learn. And it was a great company, but, they're selling relatively simple, products. It's almost like, fixings and bolts almost, right? So, it felt kind of intellectually a little bit, not engaging enough. And so I figured, okay, I like to do something that's a little bit more intellectually engaging. And so I switched jobs again in sales, but to a consultancy now called Duran Benchmarking. It's a very niche thing. They're out of Kinross, and they're the world leader in oil and gas benchmarking. So the job was to try to get oil and gas companies from different parts of the world to come together in this consortia and benchmark against each other. It's actually a very interesting job, and you get to travel to really cool places in Europe and South America and all over the world, really. And that was really great. And I stayed there for another 3 years. And I guess like with each of these jobs, I sort of like learned a little bit more about what makes me happy and what doesn't. It's kind of like an iteration process.
Yeah.
And that one I learned, right, okay, it's a job that I really enjoy and it's very intellectually challenging. You get to travel to cool places. But at some point I kind of felt, well, as you start to get a little bit older, you think, about your legacy and what you're going to do in your life and stuff. And I asked myself the question, do I want to like go to the grave thinking that my legacy was that I helped a bunch of oil and gas companies save a couple of quid? I thought, probably not. A perfectly respectable thing to do, but it wasn't sort of like what I was looking for to do with my life. So took another career turn there. I went to work for a place that are not so called the Smith Institute. And they are mathematical consultant. They basically take the latest research in mathematics and they apply it to real world problems that companies have. And I went there to take over the energy bit of that business, which was all clean energy stuff. And so I thought, okay, that I can get behind. That's something I can like feel proud of, and like I would have to tell my grandchildren about the stuff I did. And that was fantastic. But it was consultancy. And then again, I learned something more about myself, that when you do consultancy, you're kind of like, well, you're consulting, you're suggesting to other people what they should do, but you're never doing it yourself. Like it's never your own plan. You don't see it to completion. And I kind of thought, well, I at that point, I figured what I really wanted, what really is important to me professionally, and what like sort of gives me fulfillment is impact more than anything else. And with consultancy, you can have a lot of impact, but it's just never you. Right? I need to go where I can do something, that's actually got like immediate impact, and that's ended up in Arnold Park.
So how long have you now been with Arnold Clark, Pablo?
Just over a year and a half, and it's been great. Probably my favorite job to date.
There you go. And like in terms of the impact that you're able to sort of like personally be responsible for Arnold Clark, like where are the big wins? Where are you getting that sense of happiness doing that kind of work?
Well, it's really a dream job because I went in to set up a new sustainability department with a new strategy and hire a new team. It was a complete blank slate. And Arnold Clark I think in Scotland, most people will know the name, but I don't think most people realize how large it is. I think it is, by revenue, it's definitely in the top 10, if not 5 companies in the country. It's a humongous organization.
Yes.
And therefore has a humongous footprint, that goes with it. So it was like the chance to be able to come in and to like shape a sustainability program to actually start, visibly and measurably improving the environmental outcomes, and which has happened the last year and a half, which has been amazing.
And like for a company like Arnold Clark, what are the sort of the main areas that you're trying to create impact? Like what carbon footprint, offset emissions? Like where's the big focus for you leading this sustainability strategy for Arnold Clark?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, and this is not just Arnold Clark, but the entire industry, is that the process of selling, transporting, repairing, servicing cars is actually fairly carbon intensive. As you can imagine, like car dealerships, workshops, they're typically very large buildings. And, historically, they've not been built for energy efficiency. That's just never been a thing. And at the same time, you're moving cars, which are fairly heavy things, around the country to get them to the customers. So the amount of like energy and therefore carbon produced by selling cars, which most people don't think about, is actually quite high.
It's fascinating. So Pablo, I need to be on this podcast despite doing like a 22-hour day. The company I've just come back from is Camperton. So it's like a luxury camper van converting company. I visited their factory, which was is like a dream gig, right? Like I'm so into seeing processes, things being built. And then did a bit of the engineers or saw the sales process. And I'm now driving a van back up the road that we sold at the dealership in the centre of Bell. So no, this is like very timely. So in terms of like the energy efficiency of where I work today, doors wide open, freezing cold warehouses, the guys were wrapped up. So I don't know if the heating was on, but the carbon footprint of the production of those shades is probably quite significant. Transporting of the vans between factory and dealerships is either on the back of a flatbed or we're driving them. So again, we'll put a relatively significant carbon footprint. And I won't say too much else given that I'm just on the door of these people. But yeah, there's probably some quite significant carbon savings that could be moved quite quickly if it was front of mind and part of the strategy. I'll leave that thought there for now and welcome Tristan back in the room. So he fixed this point, Tristan.
My rural internet's back. I've upgraded to regional plan with Starlink, so
we
can take the satellite anywhere we want now. So, but it means that I'm able to join the podcast again.
So Pablo and I covered what he was up to in Aberdeen, the MBA, how he's ended up at Arnold Clark.
Well, you couldn't have covered the MBA that quickly, but yeah.
And talking around legacy and the sort of desire to create positive impacts, and obviously just quickly going over what published in Arnold Clark. So that's quite interesting. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Do you have a
good quick fire question? What's been your biggest win since you've joined Arnold Clark?
So it's a little bit hard to explain, but see, if you ever go to a car dealership of any company, you'll notice that they have very high ceilings. And what that means is that we're trying to heat it hot air naturally rises, right? So it's incredibly wasteful way to heat and a large volume of space. And we found these things called destratification fans, which is just a fan that pushes the air down. But you put those things in and you can cut the carbon footprint of a branch like 35%. It's actually not that expensive. And so we're rolling them out everywhere. Next time you're in Arnold Clark branch, look up and you'll see these fans. And you can see it in data, right? The day they turned on, the next day you can see your carbon footprint. It's just, plummeted. And I like that. I like when thinking I've actually done something.
Wow.
That's wild.
What does the day in the life of Pablo look like then at Arnold Clark? What are you looking at reports? Are you looking at spreadsheets? Are you strategy? What's the remit?
Primarily, and every company will set up their sustainability department differently, but at least the way that we've set it is in a way that we can provide advice and guidance to the other departments on how they can do their work more sustainable, or what changes we need to make operationally or to the buildings to make the operation more sustainable. So it's almost like an advisory role.
Yeah, that's what it says, like in-house consultancy.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect for you.
Yeah, love doing that.
Yeah. At one point in the NBA, we thought I thought Pablo was going to end up transforming Elsevier with the making strategy plan that he developed.
Still the card.
Yeah, that's the next one. Okay, that's cool. I guess I know part of your journey because I met you on the NBA, but what are the skills or attributes you think you have that have allowed you to kind of get to where you are now, or navigate to the role you're in now?
Yeah, I think I learned it a little bit earlier, but when I was working in engineering, I found that what my skills were not, and it was not too focused in great detail in very narrowly defined problems. And through that experience, what I learned about myself is that what I do best is in situations that are novel and where the problems are very large and unstructured, and where I can come in and put a structure to those very complex problems, start structuring them. So for example, with Arnold Clark, that's been perfect because I've come in and there's no department, there's not a blueprint, because no company in the industry has done this before. So you're trying to you've got a problem that's not very well defined, not very well understood, and it's large and complex. And it's like, okay, so how do I structure it so that we can start solving it bit by bit? And I think that's like the main thing. Now, that's not a necessary thing to have to work in sustainability, but I think if you're going to be a sustainability leader at this point in time, when most companies are just at the beginning of trying to set something up, that's probably something you might want to look out for.
Do you think so? In terms of like the curve, Pablo, would you say that Arnold Clark is like ahead of the curve in that respect? So I mean, like things like carbon footprint, reducing emissions, being better for the planet. I mean, these topics and CSR strategies and all this jazz that companies, I don't know, it feels like we've been doing it for a while. And like the automotive sector, car dealerships, is something now starting to happen?
I'd say that they're perhaps the company that has the greatest vision for its future in the industry, and not just about sustainability, but about where the industry is going with electric cars and with how customers like purchasing and receiving and maintaining their cars. For example, Arnold Clark's just about to open up in a few months a national network of EV chargers. They're going to be available to customers only, right? So if you bought your EV with Arnold Clark, you're going to get a national network from Inverness, Southampton. You're always going to have a place to charge, and it's going to be a rate that is going to be much more competitive than anywhere else. And it's, so, it's like the vision to think, okay, we're not just selling the vehicles, but what else are we doing that, to try to like really like get and grab the bull by the horns and get into the future.
Okay. Wow. That's really big. So no students.
Nope.
Oh, okay. So I know where I need to take my next car then, Arnold Park.
What car do you drive, Pablo?
I drive a wonderful Kia EV6, which in my humble opinion is the best EV out there right now.
Yeah? What makes it really good?
The technology that Kia has on the batteries and their powertrains, plus just like it's got the general build quality of a Kia, which is pretty solid. Mm-hmm. But the technology is just phenomenal. And, this thing, it goes forever and it charges the fastest and it always works.
What about the Ioniq 5? I know it's a sister company, Hyundai's sister company, Kia. But...
Yeah, I mean, that's quite nice. That's, I would say, like the sister car to the EV6. That's that same platform. But,
ugly sister to the EV6.
The only experience I have of electric cars is being in a Tesla that was a taxi in Zurich. Now that thing could shift, like the torque curve was obviously completely straight. Was it the same in the Kia? Are you still getting that right in? Thrown to the back of your seat and you put your foot right down? Because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you can have it if you like. I drive it on eco mode, which is it shuts off bits of the motor, so you're cruising. But when you get something, you put it in sports mode, and it does go like crazy.
Yeah, nice. See, the dream car for me for a long time has been like a P500 a box, right? So just a small hot hatch. Boy, I'm like, you know what? See, when you start doing hot hatches, but electric with like insane power load straight to the wheels. That's, I think, the point that I'm going to hit. That's weird. So I'll switch to the electric. Perhaps I'm giving away the way I drive. But yeah, not something that goes pretty quick and torque straight away.
It's something I'm looking at now because the company I work for has an EV car scheme, but it's with Octopus Energy. So so I need to figure out which one to get. It all still costs quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah,
you get a decent saving.
Yeah, the initial cost of an EV is still higher than an ICE equivalent vehicle. If you can access charging at home, the total cost of ownership is lower because you can get overnight rates with people like us.
They'll put the charger in for free. So, and I think they give you 4,000 miles free at the start, and then they've said that because just coincidentally my home is also with Octopus Energy, so they'll put me on some quite cheap rate, I think so.
Great deal.
Okay. How does we're going very into Arnold Clark here, so we will move on to a different topic, but how does Arnold Clark work with these kind of companies? Obviously Arnold Clark now you're saying is going to develop its own network chargers. Do they view Octopus as competition? Are they complementary? Could there be partnerships?
I guess a little bit of both. So for example, Octopus, which was traditionally an energy supplier, now has a car leasing business.
Yeah. And
so Arnold Clark has a car leasing business, Arnold Clark Vehicle Management. So I guess in that sense, it is a direct competitor. Yeah. But, in other parts, Octopus does a lot of things. In other parts, like the provision of energy, it could be complementary. Not to say that there's any reason why, an Arnold Clark customer could take power from whoever they want,
Yeah. I guess it's like John Lewis did broadband, but really it's someone else. So Arnold Clark could go down that avenue. But, okay, interesting. What attracted you? You may have covered it when I dropped out, but what attracted you to your current role? Was there a particular aspect that was sold to you that you're like, okay, this is too good to turn down? I can't imagine you always wanted to be in the car industry. It could be wrong.
Yeah, no, it's not. It wasn't because I always wanted to be in the car industry, although I do love cars. It had never occurred to me that working in a company that sells cars would be pretty cool. But I think really what it was the opportunity to come in and build something from scratch, something really big that would have real measurable impact, positive impact, and build it yourself from scratch, which, it's not very often that these large businesses open up whole new departments that in areas that they've never done anything before. So it was a very and it's at this point in time as well, because I think in 10 years time, these opportunities will not exist. I think most companies will already have a plan.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Well, do you think you'll be with the company for a long time then?
I would like to think so.
Yeah. Yeah. You can never say, never predict the future. But
where is the office for you, Pablo?
It's in Hillington, just across the M8 from IKEA here in Glasgow. It's a 10-minute commute, which is really handy.
Especially from the West End. It's a nice part of town.
Yeah.
So conscious of the time, so maybe this is the point that we sort of, bring the mood down a little bit before we bring it back up in the second half. So the question at this point, Pablo, would be, what's like your biggest failure, biggest setback? And we like to think that failure isn't a word that we use. So what was the key learning that you took from it, and how have you applied that to what your result is?
Yeah, when I joined the oil and gas industry, I did so, as I mentioned before, because when you're in Aberdeen, you can see the amount of money that industry produces. So I had the chance to join, and I think I joined. I thought, okay, that's me set for life. This, I hit the jackpot. And then 2 years in, still, must have been 24 or something, and there was a huge oil and gas downturn. And then, the money just dried up pretty much overnight and completely, really aggressively. And the company I was working for at the time decided that they had about 20 people in my job role and they only needed about 10. So they went through this, and they had to do that throughout the conference. They had to go through a large public, very complex consultation process to downsize the workforce. And at the time, I was on a working visa, being an immigrant. So your ability to stay in the UK is tied to the job. So if you lose your job, you lose, basically, I think you get 4 weeks to pack your bags and get going. So it's kind of disruptive, you don't want to be losing your job in that situation. So it was a very, very stressful time because you just don't know, am I going to be one of the 10 days? Am I not going to be? That's probably one of the most stressful times in my life. However, one of the good things that came out of that is that it made me realize that, it sort of made me think, is this what I really want to do for the rest of my life? I think had that not happened, there's a possibility I could have stayed in a job that was not the right job for me for a decade or more, and it would have been, I guess, wasted time because it was a journey for me to get from where I started to where I ended up, which is where I want to be now. And that takes time. And I think had it not been for that sort of rude awakening and like, hey, this is happening, you have to now think what you want to do with your life, I might have just ended up staying there. So I try to think of it as a positive thing.
Where one door closes, another one opens, Pablo.
Yeah. Right.
Nice. So, do you think Scotland's your home forever? Is there aspirations to move back to Mexico at some point, or is this now where you'll be?
No, I don't think so. I think I would like to stay in Scotland. I like it here, particularly Glasgow, the west of Scotland. I find that people are particularly friendly here and, relaxed and welcoming. And, a lot of people complain about the weather. I actually like the weather. I grew up somewhere where it's sunny every single day and you're just tired of the sun. It can be quite tiring, too hot, sunny every single day. So I quite like it. There's not too much snow either. I think it's perfect.
Love it. In terms of I'm a Belgian national, born in Manchester, but I travel on a Belgian passport, Belgian national. Last time I came to Edinburgh Airport, he asked me if I had settled status, which I said no. She was like, "You did go sort that." I'm like, "Nah, bro, I'm up there and that." I refused to. It's like at this point, can you stay forever? Like, we lived here long enough, or is the immigration status still a concern for you, Pablo?
No, I am now a British citizen, and that took 12 years, which is a long time. But yes, I was very glad because dealing with, immigration can be very stressful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can.
Nobody wants to be sent on a plane to Rwanda.
That's true.
No,
I've never been to Rwanda.
No, I'm sure it's not actually that bad, but maybe I should in that Tory hotel that they're set up. You might want to do it.
No, Jeremy, I'm asking questions now. What was your...
Pablo, I don't.
I know, yeah, I should be very rude. I'm sorry. What was your transition from the MBA or post-MBA like for you? It's not something we've ever really discussed, or we might have indirectly, but I'd be keen to understand what your expectations were internally. We all had, outward aspirations and different motivations for doing the MBA. What was your post-MBA experience like? Did it go to how you expected or wanted?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they do an MBA, they have the American experience in mind. Whereas, you do an MBA and then there's very well-defined paths that you follow after that, with MBA postgraduate programs at companies, that kind of stuff. And that doesn't really exist in Scotland. There is maybe a handful of companies like Amazon or something, but it's not really a thing. Yeah. So if you do an MBA in Scotland, you need to then figure out what you want to do. And that was actually quite daunting. And, I applied I actually didn't know at that point. It wasn't clear to me what I wanted to do. And I did apply for all sorts of different things, from private banking with, the Royal Bank of Scotland to, sort of engineering roles and everything in between. And I ended up in a sales role because, as I mentioned before, I think one of the things I learned from the MBA was that if you have solid sales skills, you'll probably be okay in life. There's always going to be something you can do for yourself and your family. And at the time, as I mentioned, that's not something they teach you in the MBA. They don't touch sales at all. They do marketing and operations and HR and every other function of business, but not the sales function and not the sales skills, which I think is a huge gap in education in MBA. And so I guess the only way to learn is sort of like apprentice, right? Go work for the company that has a lot of salespeople and they're pretty good, and maybe you can learn something from them.
Did sales come naturally to you, Pablo? Because like, I guess so for startup entrepreneurs, startup businesses, like I think people forget that like, sales is the lifeblood of one business. And it's all fun and well having a great idea, but unless you can actually go and sell that idea, it's going to be a pretty hard time. I think for like a lot, like myself included, quite a rude awakening to realize that, sure, we've might have got an MVP, but now all of a sudden we need to sell this thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And the answer was no, not at all. It was a very, very daunting, terrifying task. And you try to see if there's, courses you can do or training you can take. And there is, but it's not really quite, the only way that I managed to learn and get good at it was by trial and error, and then trying to hang out with people who were older than me and who were better at it, and just observing what they were doing and then just kind of doing what they were doing.
Nice. And in the sales role, was it very target focused? So I guess like having been down at this dealership and spoken to some car sales people, I'm like, geez, this is like the sitcoms. This is like pretty cutthroat. You could clearly tell that they're like, so how many did you sell today? How did you get tomorrow? Like, did you find that in your sales role that it was like target, commissions, trying to keep up with people in the team?
Not to the extent that I have observed in other places, because I think the companies that I went to work for were target driven, but not immensely aggressively. Whereas in some industries, for example, in the motor trade, yes, I mean, commissions and targets are an immense part of how life works, and people who do well do very well for themselves.
I'm always interested in this one. So, like for young people who, it's like the MBA, and like this, my experience at the MBA at Strathclyde was that this was a prestigious course that was going on, and it attracted like a really high caliber of applicant. So maybe that's
of course you're looking at them, Jeremy.
No, it's not. No, but it was. And when as a startup coming at Strathclyde, and we were able to do those projects that you described, where we could work with a team member and Liz, oh my goodness, we were like, yes, we would like to do that. So we knew that what we would get out doing that project, it was always game changing for what we were doing. And the question was, what advice would you give to young people coming out of uni and starting out in their field? Like what are the key things that people with that qualification that should be applying to what we're going to do?
I guess a couple of things. The first is that you need to try to figure out what you want to do. And I think for most people, that has to do in large part with what they're good at. I think most people enjoy doing something that they're good at, and most people do not enjoy something that they're not good at. And so you need to observe yourself a little bit and try to understand what are the type of skills that you have and what do you perform particularly well at. And then try to look for jobs where the work matches those skills. For example, I get sustainability. A lot of people come and say to me that they'd like to go into sustainability, but the question is, but what exactly would you like to sustainability? Because there's first of all, there's many things you can do within it, but a lot of these things require very specific skills, and if you don't have those, then you're never going to be happy, even as much as you'd like to do your bit for the planet. Because if you're trying to do something that you're not good at, over time, it can be quite
demoralizing.
A difficult way to live your life. So
it becomes a chore.
Try to know yourself. Try to see what you're good at.
Can I get a follow-up question, Tristan?
Yes, but I also want to, because I like to talk about myself, I also want to say that my experience of transition to MBA is it felt like a bit of an identity crisis. Is probably the most succinct way I could describe it. And like Pablo said, you effectively have to find out what you want to do as quick as possible without jumping into the wrong thing immediately. And you can always, there's never kind of like a point of no return, but you could quite easily end up in the wrong role by forcing it and changing a great path. So that was my experience. It's really difficult. There's not a right answer, but you've certainly got to try and figure out, like you said, what you want in life and what you're good at. Effectively, what can you sell to a company. You know, what's your value proposition? And it can't be based around what you've been sold on the MBA or what you expected from the MBA. Because if everyone did that, like Pablo said, you'd be doing some sort of graduate program or, you know, high floating thing and earning lots of money and, you know, having this amazing life, which doesn't happen. You've got to, you know, the hard work you've got to put in is I think you don't realize when you're on the MBA that you've got to start that, you know, before you probably even started the MBA. You know, if you knew that, then you could argue you wouldn't have probably done the MBA. You wouldn't need to do the MBA, but certainly, you know, there's a lot of work people forget about. Maybe they don't want to do because they just want the golden ticket, which is never going to come.
Does it not come though? Graduate salary restricted MBA is pretty tasty, no?
Well, not for me. I'm the wrong person to ask. I started a company, so I earn nothing. So maybe Pablo could, you know. No, I don't think. You know, I don't think there's a golden ticket. I think there's lots of value in the MBA, and I don't regret doing it in the slightest. I thought it was a great experience, but certainly I don't think anyone, not in a negative way, but I can't imagine anyone kind of got what they thought they would out of it. You know, they probably got more in some areas and less in others, but you know, but I don't think anyone really understands what you're going into for that. What does the next sort of few years look like for you, Pablo? You're settled in Glasgow, got a young family. What are kind of some of the personal goals you have for the next sort of 3 to 5 years?
So I guess, professionally, if you look at my CV, I've changed jobs quite a lot since I graduated. But it's also for a good reason. You know, I started very far from where I needed to end up at. And the process of getting from A to B was a lot of steps. It wasn't linear at all. And so that's fine. You know, that was sort of a chapter in my life, like trying to build towards where I feel I'm now, which is where I think is where I should be. You know, I often think like if when I was in uni, I had wanted to do what I do now and I had to choose a linear path to here, I don't think it would have worked out. I think for this to have worked out, I had to have done all those seemingly unrelated, but really foundational jobs like engineering and then sales and the consultancies, to be able to end up where I was. But what that means now is that I generally feel like I'm in the right place now. I've never experienced work before where I am so happy to go to the office and you know, where staying an extra couple hours is not a problem at all, just as long as it's okay at home, because you know, so it's the first time in my professional career that I've experienced this. So my plan is kind of like stick around and see it through. I think, you know, from a sustainability perspective, we need to solve most of the problem by 2030. And if we don't, then we'll have a big problem, particularly climate. So I think to now 2030 is the time to like try to do as much as you can. So that's sort of the plan. Plus, you know, I am settled in Glasgow now, young family. It's nice, I think, to give children some continuity as well with things.
Yeah. So in Glasgow until they finished secondary school. And their sights on going off to Aberdeen University. And
no, Mexico City, go back to their roots.
Yeah.
Well, then I've got 2 questions for you, Pablo. How old are your kids? And then secondly, what do you understand sustainability to be?
Yeah, so I've only got one son. He's 4, and you know, in terms of sustainability, you know, there's formal definitions about, you know, generating the required outputs without having, you know, damaging the future and abilities, etc. But the way I like to think about it is that, you know, we have these like 2050 net zero targets, and it feels so far, right? But if you got a 4-year-old boy, he's going to be in his 30s by then. Like for him, it's not that far into the future. He will definitely be around. So what I try to think is like, well, okay, now I've got someone that I'm responsible for. Like, what can we do so that when they're in their 30s, we haven't handed them a completely dysfunctional world?
My kids are 7 and 4, boy and a girl. He was the oldest. And you know what? I that's a nice reminder. But there's problems, especially from my parents' generation, my in-laws. Like, guys, you're not going to be here. Why are you voting this way? Well, it doesn't impact you. It impacts the grandkids. Yeah, that's a really useful thing to be reminded. But But I guess the sustainability question, I find it massively frustrating, hugely frustrating. So the industry that I work in, Power Life, selling branded goods to corporate, I feel like we've been ahead of the curve for a long time. And when we're getting the questions back from the purchasers who are saying they're looking for sustainable products, I'm like, you don't understand what that means, because what you're actually asking me for is a bamboo Bluetooth speaker. You're not considering any other stuff, in my opinion. And, you sort of touched on it. It's like, well, who's defining what sustainable means? Are we using like a UN definition or your internal policy, which actually is just one full product? We're not actually looking for a holistic, sustainable solution. That's the reason I was asking Mark about it. Because for me, I think that is frustrating to hear from corporates that they have a sustainability agenda. Actually, it's not massively sustainable. They're only focusing on a really small, a very narrow part of what is actually quite a big and large complex problem.
Yeah, that is frustrating. There's been a lot of backlash lately against that sort of greenwashing or ESG investing and stuff like that, where it's more posturing than doing something. And unfortunately, yeah, you find it everywhere.
Okay.
If money wasn't an object, Pablo, would you be doing the job you're doing right now?
Yeah, I thought about this. If I won the lottery, I'd keep a job. Because I think, beyond making a paycheck, I think for me at least, having a job that has impact gives me a sense of purpose that creates fulfillment that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
And this is a job, that I genuinely do like to do. Now, my previous jobs, if you asked me, would I have kept doing those? Maybe not. But this one, yeah, for sure.
Brilliant.
You?
Yeah, right now I could relate to a lot of what you're saying about, I guess.
Yeah, wishing for a lottery and all the time.
Going through lots of experiences and actually being a place in your career where you it's not necessarily being comfortable, but it's more, for me, more confidence. I know, I've got the experience and learning where, I don't know everything and I can't deal with everything, but, if I'm facing a particular challenge at work, I can generally do it. It's usually, my own, defeating myself rather than anything else. It's not my knowledge or experience, but it would be getting caught up in the kind of minutiae of detail, probably that would be my flaw. But yeah, no, what I do right now is really, really rewarding. And it's, from post MBA to now, I've had lots of things I'm really proud of, done lots of interesting things, lots of catastrophic failures, lots of really difficult personal life experiences that, forced me to kind of reflect on, so many things, but so many life choices or just, really, really, kind of personality flaws. And, but, when I look at the role I do now, all that bloody experience is ideal for what I do, and if I'd, had a graduate job or done something else where, I've not done it, so I don't, maybe I couldn't say, but, I certainly wouldn't have got the real experience or learnings that are, it's just uncanny how not perfect, but ideal, how compatible and suitable they are for not just the challenges of the job, but for the business. It's the right size of business. It's big enough to be interesting, but small enough where you've got some opinion and value. Because that's something that I've learned I really need is to have a voice and to have an input. If I don't feel I'm contributing, then, I'm not someone that wants to, I won't put any effort into it. So yeah, definitely.
That's good. It feels like you've also landed where you needed to be, even though the path is.
Yeah, definitely. And you just I don't know, maybe it's an age thing, but you certainly get a greater sense of self and understanding, the good points and bad points, and you're far more comfortable instead of chasing the, the dream, so to speak. I think some people might view that as a negative thing, but it's not meant to sound that way. But you're very comfortable in yourself and where you're at, and recognise that there's maybe the pace, you don't have to do everything at once, and there's a greater purpose in life beyond the kind of almost social status. I was never that materialistic, but you still, want to, have the best job with the best money and all these things, whether you're materialistic or not. And you certainly realize quite quickly what's important and what is much better. Is it a job you enjoy and have purpose and you can have value, or is it, a paycheck? The money doesn't, is a motivator to a point, but it's not the main motivator.
Well, I think, for a lot of people, myself, my younger self included, when you don't know yourself well enough to know what you actually want, the easiest thing is just to use money and prestige as the North Star. And that's okay, but, it doesn't work out for most people, I don't think.
No, very few people. We might have really touched on it already, but what kind of advice, or what would you tell your younger self, if you could kind of go back in time to 20-year-old Pablo? What advice would you give yourself?
Buy a bunch of Tesla stock and hold on to
Tesla and Apple. Bitcoin. Oh my goodness, the amount of Bitcoin I would be buying. Yeah.
No, but seriously, I think when I look back, I think all the experiences I had were great, and they led to where I am just now, which is exactly where I wanted to be. But at the time, I always felt a sense of rush, to try to rush through them, to try to get to the next thing. I think if I could go back, the one thing, it's not a regret, but if I could go back, I would just say to myself, enjoy journey. You will get there eventually. Enjoy what you're doing at that point, and it's not going to be forever. And even if it's not the best for you at the time, then don't worry, because it's just a building block.
Yeah. There's I say loads. There's kind of experiences that kind of relate to that or link to that thought of sometimes I think you don't appreciate or you take for granted the kind of expertise or people around you, and you didn't realize how valuable it would have been if you just asked a few more questions, or, you're too busy, almost not necessarily complaining, but thinking, oh, I want, I want to be doing something else, or, thinking about other things, and you get caught up in the kind of negatives of the frustrations that I did anyway. And you're like, there were so many really people I didn't, not the people themselves, but I didn't appreciate how much I could have learned if I just asked these questions. And for me individually, it would have gone back to confidence, and I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to ask, because, I would at that point, I would have worried about not having the right answer, or, all these kind of things that when you're younger, you're like, oh, you don't realize that it's okay not to know these things and whatnot. So confidence would have been a major barrier. So it's just but if you do recognize those things early on, you can just soak up. And I think, it's always difficult comparing generations, but when you look at, the next generation, they're far more confident and comfortable in general at asking questions, soaking things up. There's lots of things they're rubbish at, but that's certainly one difference that I've noticed comparing myself, or even I look at my son, my eldest is 15, he's been he'd done his own podcast at 14, and, just on a radio show. And it's just I would never have, at 30 years old, I wouldn't have done it, let alone at, 13, and it's just, it's interesting, these different qualities. Yeah. What has there been one individual or person, Pablo, that you either, I say look back on, it might have been recent, where there's been integral, pivotal to your development or learning, or even serendipitous kind of opportunity that came about from this interaction that's really helped you?
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I froze there.
You back? You don't have one? Okay. It's interesting.
Do you?
I do. I saw him in the RBS accelerator. I was like, that man had a huge impact on my life and where I ended up. So I originally started like an architectural engineering course. So we did a lot of civil, concrete, all that kind of stuff. But there was architectural classes that we did, and that was really what I wanted to do. So the tutor in first year, Jan, it's like I wasn't even allowed to. It was like I said, the architectural engineers who got to do launched to be a project, and the tutor Jan was like, you know what? Would you fancy switching courses to just architecture? I was like, hell yeah, I would. And he put in good word with the undergrad course convener, got me into degree and got me on the course. And I saw him again, like this, like years later. I saw him in RDS, the accelerator last week. I said, sure, what? You hadn't answered me, and you hadn't put in that good word, I wouldn't have done architecture, and I wouldn't have been where I am now. So it's like that we were, so, you know, that man had a really big impact. But he doesn't even realize it, doesn't even know.
Yeah. I got a couple of big ones, and then there's little ones where maybe more in line with what I was saying before about people that you can learn from, but people I probably didn't realize that were almost mentoring me or you know, at least taking me under their wing, where I, you know, either I just didn't realize or appreciate it, or they were just kind of, I just thought they were being nice, but didn't realize kind of the impact until you look back and how they shaped your life or help you. Yeah. There's definitely a few. So what major projects or initiatives are coming up? You mentioned a few. I imagine there's loads you can't say because they're top secret. But what can we expect to see from you in the next wee while?
Well, actually, one thing I got is beginning to trial vehicle-to-grid charging at the dealerships. So, you know, that's when you use the EV battery to power back the building or indeed the grid. Because so at the moment, the grid has immense problems with the fact that renewables are not always on when you need them, right? So you need to use gas. But if you had batteries, then you could sort of fix that problem. Now, the issue is that batteries are quite expensive. And so if we wanted to buy batteries, we have to spend a lot of money. However, you can imagine that in 10 years' time, we'll have 20,000 EVs parked there, and they just parked there because they're stuck there waiting for people to come buy them. And each one's got a humongous battery because EVs have enormous batteries. Like my flat, I've measured this, could run off my EV for a full week. And that's, using the washing machine. They're really big batteries. And so you have this basically enormous battery parts sitting out there that just look like cars. They happen to have four wheels and a steering wheel. So if you could put this bi-directional charge, so we're actually investigating this with Strathclyde. We're doing we're funding a PhD with them, to look into the sort of like the algorithms that you need to, for optimization and that kind of stuff. And it's nearly there, We've got the first demonstrator coming up here in Glasgow in the Innovation Center. And it's just 2 Nissan Leafs to begin with, just demonstrate the concept. But, in 10 years time, you could just see all these cars plug, rows of cars plug the bend, power the grid.
Everything. I'm going to start asking the final questions here. Tristan, the one that I enjoy is, So, name of the podcast, insert buzzword. Pablo, what is a buzzword that you either enjoy using at work or one that you really hate using at work? But what's your buzzword, please?
That's a good question. I think I do use a lot of buzzwords. I'm going to say, there was no sustainability because that is kind of a buzzword and I use it all the time. I'm trying to think of something more interesting, but probably sustainability. Is there
a buzzword in Arnold Clark that is a catchphrase almost, or that is used regularly within the business?
Still cars.
Yeah. We hate Peter Vardy or something like that.
I'll just hear ball passing up.
Brilliant.
Final thoughts, Tristan.
Just thank you very much, Pablo, for giving your time. I don't have any other final thoughts apart from it's been fantastic to speak to you. Apologies, I missed a large chunk of it. Really appreciate it. And, on the MBA, although you socialize, I certainly had to because I lived in Crieff, I was, doing 2 hours each way, and didn't as many opportunities. And when you are kind of engaging, you're kind of working on projects, and there might be, engaged, but you don't really get to hear people's story properly, or maybe it's a reflecting of my lack of attention. But it was really interesting to hear some of your journey that I hadn't heard, and thank you for giving up your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's the type of questions that people who know each other and sometimes know each other very well don't ask each other.
That's that. Yeah. Cool. Let's close it. Goodbye. We'll be back next week with another episode and another exciting guest.